Yeah, and welcome to the Smooth Live Show with your host, Paul Toothpicks Coory. Now, before I introduce our artist, I just want to ask you to jump on and press the subscribe button and click the notifications bell, because then you'll be able to catch up with what's going on and who we're interviewing or who our artist profiles are here in the Smooth Live Show. Also, be sure to check out our socials on SmoothJazz.Melbourne. It's our Instagram and Facebook socials, and you'll see what's also happening. But spontaneous Groovin Combustion, WarrenA.Keller, contemporary smooth jazz woodwindist, composer, producer, current single Double Juices. It's the number 18 in the top 100 of the SmoothJazz.com charts, and critics call you a fiery jazz ensemble. Welcome, Warren.
I get some fire going here for us.
I wanted to push that in because I just thought exactly what's been written out there in the market is that here's Warren is the fiery jazz ensemble, and I can get a taste of that. That's for sure.
I like it. I'm all about the funk, and if there's a little bit of fire there, I can take it.
Fire in the belly, they say.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time out, Warren, and the other side of the world. And obviously, it's getting late on your time. I'm sure. What time you got over in West Virginia?
It is 7 p.m.
Oh, 7 p.m. Okay.
You know where your children are.
Well, we're just about to have a coffee, so yeah, it's live from Melbourne, which we're really excited. And so, tell me, Warren. Again, thanks. How did it all start? I believe there's a big story behind it.
There is, and I'm a big storyteller, so you gotta kind of pull the reins in on me. But I've been in music since probably 16 or 17 years old, starting with rock and roll bands, and kind of through the disco funk era. Played a ton of Chicago Transit Authority with the first band, and by the way, at 40 plus years, we're still all very good friends and still in touch, which is nice. Band called Harper, Jersey Shore band. Nice. And then I went to New York City, Manhattan, kind of that new wave post-punk scene, Max's Kansas City, CBGB, all of that stuff as a sax player, sideman mostly. Have been a lead singer, along the way as well. Wound up in Nashville doing modern country writing for almost 10 years. Got, kind of close there, kind of close to New York, always close but no cigar. Very frustrating, get dropped on your head after really feeling like you're going somewhere. It's tough. And honestly, I was so disconnected from my musical self and so really busy with my daytime thing, which is kind of an interesting thing as well. Kind of saved my life really during some really hard, depressing times, falling short in the music world. But yeah, this whole contemporary smooth jazz thing really came out of left field, if you will. I had really not played saxes and flutes seriously. And when I say seriously, I mean more than an hour out of the case a year for about 12 years, and really had it stuffed way down there somewhere. We kind of repress things sometimes that we love and that have hurt us and maybe that we can't do like we'd like to do. And it was just a wonderful succession of inspiration, going back to the instruments again, original tunes starting to come out of my mind, home recording, and then launching and seeing what people thought of it.
Right. But you mixed around with the funk and the rock and so on, within the music scene. How were you contributing? What was the instruments you were playing and
started out as a singer and a saxophonist and flutist with the cover band in the old days, doing a lot of CTA, a lot of the funk disco stuff, which we loved. I mean, the rhythm guys hated it because it was all chinga chinga chinga, and our horn guys had all these great riffs and these great licks, right? So I really enjoyed that. Like I said, then went to New York City doing original rock and roll with Ronnie and the Jitters and Louie and the Lost Hombres, and kind of rubbing elbows with everybody from Billy Idol to Blondie's Clan to a lot of folks at that time, and close, no cigar, almost got signed to Stiff CBS in New York City. And then after kind of recovering from that go round, moved to Nashville, Music City and wrote for, you know, almost 9+ years, got close, had a couple of major holds on some big artists, but no big cuts. And then left Nashville in 2001. And like that sort of really started the denouement, if you will, of getting further and further from music, but did a lot of recording, a lot of performing along the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I don't want to go too deep, but you can ask if you want to ask. But again, it was just a neat sort of a reawakening of all of this for me.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, I guess, preparation time, you know, for where you are today. As you said, that sort of real left wing.
Yeah, yeah, because, you know, being in and out of studios for years and always being interested in the process and asking the questions and being tight with some real good friends who were engineers and,
Yeah.
you know, trying my hand in production over the years. So now that we're in this digital audio workstation, computer-based home studio era, you know, I had the basics of how to record. And so
Yeah.
that was a great blessing. But just a quick story: we live in a very small little college town, and they have a tremendous jazz program there. And on a couple of season-ending concerts, like in the autumn, I heard these young bebop kids playing like amazing trumpet, and it was very inspiring to me. Something started to stir, and I really started to fall deeper for jazz. Started really looking back into the history and getting the horns out and practicing daily and really working hard to, you know, kind of be more of a jazz player, because really
Yeah.
I was more of a funk, blues, rock guy beforehand. And then, as I said, you know, about 2 years ago, thought I was doing some good work and just kind of put it out there to see what people thought about it, and heard from some very
Mm.
legitimate record promotion people in California that said, "Hey, we think this could work for contemporary jazz radio, and we'd like to work together." So that really began the odyssey of the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's amazing, Warren. That's fantastic. Well, let me just take you back a little bit, because you're from a musical family.
Yep.
Your father is an elite pianist teacher, world-class operatic baritone, and your mother also apprenticed with several luminaries. So it's only destiny that you come up and you start to, you know, as you said, you don't pick
Some
up a cigar, but
sometimes I do think about that. I mean, I literally sat in my mom's belly, you know, for 9 months, nestled up against the Steinway baby grand while she taught lessons all day and practiced. And so I honestly do feel, as you say, that I mean, it's kind of on a cellular level that, you know, music is within you. And of course, a lot of people, you hear a lot of stories of things skipping generations. Some of the greatest musicians out there say, "Oh, my parents had no talent," or, you know, but there's generally some exposure that just really lights that fire, right? And in my case, mom really wasn't going to let us get away with not being musicians. On, yeah, of course, it backfired, you know, after 2 years of college, when I said, "Hey, I'm going on the road with the band, man, because that's what I want to do." And, you know, she's like, I created a monster here, right? Um, but yeah, they were both very talented. And, you know, during the time together, they concertized some. Once they split up, which so many couples do, right? Unfortunately, even back then, he really kind of lost his musical self, and he was just a brilliant singer during the time they were together. And as you said, you know, both studied with some very top people in New York City, and were really world-class musicians.
Mm, right. Can I ask, you know, you're woodwindist, so why the brass? I mean, was that just something that in the earlier days really, you know, challenged you? You like the sound of it, or like?
I think it was more about something that finally resonated with me.
Yeah.
Again, mom was a little bit obsessive about, I mean, my poor sister was at the piano at 2 years old, and she tried to start me there. And I honestly, I wish I had stuck with piano. It's so helpful, even if you're not a keyboardist. But I went through a few different things, and nothing was really catching me except for singing. But then at 8 years old, we moved down to South New Jersey, and
Right.
our neighbor came over with an old clarinet, and that was it. That was it, man. It was like, started studying with, you know, some terrific teachers, players. Kenny DeVerne was a world famous jazz clarinetist, soprano saxophonist, and that really lit it. I mean, everybody wants to play guitar, and at about 38 years old, I finally, got to strum some acoustic in Nashville days, because it was a lot better than demoing songs on an auto harp, right? And at the end of the day, though, no, I mean, I love my instruments, and it can be a little defeating sometimes, especially in the smooth jazz world, because sax is so prevalent, and there are so many fantastic players. So it can be a little bit defeating, but you have to, be as good as you can be, keep working at it, and try to make your own statement.
You Warren, have a distinctive sound, and I think that being in the radio world for a number of years, that, as you said, saxophone is quite covered across the genre, but everyone has a distinctive sound, and I think you've got your own style and your own sound, and you need to be good at it for sure, and you are.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Can I just jump back here? You studied with the late Kenny DeVerne, jazz clarinist.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an interesting instrument. I mean, I'm sure it challenged you to even be better than Kenny, given the fact that that's the instrument that you love, or that's the style that you want to play to.
Well, Kenny was a monster. I mean, again, multi downbeat pole winner. In his day, he was considered to be the finest jazz clarinetist of his day. I didn't study jazz with him, nor did I study jazz with Jerry Arrico before him, who was also a tremendous player. It was really classical. It was all about classical clarinet. And oddly enough, I love classical clarinet, but I don't love clarinet for pop or jazz. I'm not crazy about the Dixieland thing. It was much more about the saxophone, and being a little bit of a little chubbo back in the high school days and getting tormented for playing clarinet. Oh, you're playing your little licorice stick, and and I won't say what else they called it, but it's like, if I'm going to march in the band and I'm going to play in the stage band, the jazz band, no, I got to start saxophone. So I spent a lot more time on tenor and alto for many years than clarinet, and I really enjoyed pushing hard on the flute the last couple of years too.
Yeah, right. Okay. So flirting with the jazz over the years, you sing at rock, which you've mentioned, and funk and blues. You've been privileged to play with members of David Bowie, Billy Idol, and Flo and Eddie, plus lots more. And again, does that sort of rub you, and sort of with some of the class, I guess, when we talk about the rock and pop sort of era, does it sort of rub off and set you up for becoming even greater than potentially who you are?
Those were such exciting days. But there was a sense, and I really regret it now, there was a sense that I and my band were going there too, that we were going to hit, we were going to make it. We were playing on WPIX FM, major FM in New York City and Boston. We had a small deal in England on Nervous Records. Billy Idol's drummer, Steve Missel, was our drummer. You mentioned Flo and Eddie. Russ Shirley was one of our guitarists. If you've heard of Lost Straitjackets, they're phenomenal. Eddie Angel was one of our guitarists. So there was this sense that we were going to get there too. So I didn't spend as much time as I should have approaching some of these folks. I mean, it was wonderful to be told, oh, Bowie left word for you that he loved your sax playing, or Blondie's drummer Clem Burke grabs you and makes you play with his sister at a major label showcase, even though you've never heard the tunes before. But I was lax about it, because I figured, well, we'll get there, and I don't want to bother these guys, and I'm a little bit shy. So, but it was very exciting to be around that. And oh my gosh, and I've always been this hyper vigilant, what they call a pattern maker, right? So if I see a face across the room 100 feet away, I'm like, oh, well, there's Lux Interior from the Cramps, or there's Billy, whatever it is, I'm going to spot them. So it was very exciting. Of course, we didn't get anywhere. I mean, at the end of the day, in that business, it's all or nothing, really, and we always, unfortunately, didn't quite get that deal.
Yeah, sure. So if you just jumped on, it's a Smooth Live Show with me, myself, the host, Paul Toothpicks Coory, and we're chatting with WarrenA.Keller from Spontaneous Groovin Combustion. We're really excited to have you on the program today.
Thank you.
See, mate, 2015, it's like a recommitment. It's just like this real, change of life, so to speak. You're recommitted to the jazz, tenor, flute. Like obviously a change to what's happened. It's like a sort of a rebirth type of thing. I mean, you've once played and now you've come back and now here you are ready to go and push the sound out. 2015 was obviously quite an influential year for you then.
It really was. Like I said, that the young jazz players from the local college, I mean, it was so inspirational to me. I felt on a very, again, cellular level, something stimulating and something stirring. And the following year, there was another year-ending season-ending concert, and it was a saxophone player, Phil Summers. I became friendly with him, and the wall just broke down. I got home. I took the tenor sax Mark VI out of the case. It was almost like a semi-religious experience, right? Like worshiping at the altar of saxophone. And from that day forward, and here it's been, going 4 years, almost every single daily practice, and just very committed to trying to be the kind of player. In some ways, I always felt like a poser, right? That French word poseur, in that sense where, yeah, I had talent, but I was a package deal, right? I could sing, I was a good performer, I had some charisma, and I could play. But, now at this ripe age, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't have the looks, I don't have the hair either. And then you start getting more serious about your chops, and maybe specializing in that one thing. And so I'm not singing now. And I do perform with a really great rock and roll band, at least pre-COVID, every weekend, which I love. But I really wanted to be more player than poser this time around.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, I mean, you write all your music yourself?
Yeah, I do. I wish I had more collaboration. It's been difficult for me. I mean, I've been in West Virginia since 2007, and
Right.
it's not exactly the jazz capital of the world, right? It's mostly stringed instruments and old time music and bluegrass and country. Although there are some fantastic jazz players here,
Yeah.
I've made some friendships, but it just was kind of clear that I wasn't going to get into that inner circle. These guys have been playing together for decades. A lot of them are teachers and professors, and they know each other, and they know how they play, and I got that. And so I kind of turned inward and started doing my own thing. And I've always written.
Yeah.
I was a very lyrically driven guy, right? So Nashville's all about the story and the song, the two verses and a chorus, and maybe a bridge if you really need it. And I really honed that craft. And although I'm not able to use that at this point, which I'm very glad for, it about cracked me up and made my mind blow apart. But those tools, get into this genre. It's about brevity, it's about simplicity, it's about catchiness, and really kind of singing a song without words, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Warren, tell us about the Waltz for Christine.
That's
Now,
interesting that you stumbled upon that. Christine is my wife. Christine, she's a wonderful jewelry maker and an all-around creative artist, but a really good jeweler. And that was kind of those first 6 tunes when I started out on this journey, and they were kind of, bebop light. It's kind of before I found myself in contemporary jazz. I knew I wasn't going to be the next John Coltrane, especially for having skipped 12 years of practice. But those tunes were all kind of in that more straight ahead jazz, hard bop tradition, and that tune I think is very pretty, and it's the only one of those that I actually named. I think she was like, "You better name something for me," So it's tune 1, tune 2, tune 3, 4, 5, 6, and then tune 6 finally became this Waltz for Christine. And it's funny with names, right? Because in the last moment, I told you how I was a word guy, right? I'm all about lyrics and hooks and strong. But when I tried to name these instrumental tunes, I had the hardest time In fact, when I first submitted it to Smooth Jazz, Sandy Shore, she was like, "Well, I like tune 7 and tune 9," and
Yeah,
I realized, oh, oh my gosh, I mean, I need to come up with some names. So
yeah,
I knew a guy, an acquaintance, who used to follow the first band, Harper. He was kind of a Harper groupie. And we haven't met physically, but I knew he was a monstrous smooth jazz fan, goes to concerts and goes on smooth cruises and whatnot. So I'm like, Jeff, listen to these tunes and give me some ideas if anything comes to you for names. And he came up with one for Kicking It, in fact. Of course,
yeah.
after the fact, I found out that there had been a Gerald Albright album called Kicking It years before. But once he did that, that like opened the floodgate for me. Now it's easy to name them, and I have fun naming them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's just finding the key to the door sort of thing, isn't it?
it
You
is.
know?
It's like opening the floodgate. Exactly. It's like, and the thing is, because again, being so word driven, it's like, well, this is a riff. It's like, how do you put a name on this? I
Yeah,
mean, I don't want to cheapen it. I don't want to give it the wrong name. And I think a lot of those names come up with people who are fortunate enough to play in an ensemble. And the guys are just being guys, and they're riffing off each other, and they go, "Oh, how about this, man?" Or "This happened to me today. Oh, that's a good name. Let's go with that." I didn't have that. So I just started keeping a list of cool little idea names, titles that I would think of,
sure.
and then say, no, that's appropriate for this one. That's appropriate for that one.
For sure, yeah. It's like a name in the box sort of thing for the title of each song, and
Right.
I mean, obviously, you have something. I find it interesting when you look at a number of different tracks, and I go, okay, I love that. This is what you're suggesting, but I also love that one, and I love that one, and I want to play that one, and before you know it, you're taking two or three out of your sort of the scope of what you want to be able to showcase.
That's great.
A wonderful song, that one, Waltz for Christine.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about the coming self-titled album, Spontaneous Groovin Combustion. It's going to be released, you mentioned, I think, February of 2021.
Yep. Yeah. We're thinking February 5th or the 12th. I guess there's kind of a log jam in January of releases, and February seemed like a real good time to target that. So I'm trying to move that along because I know how time sneaks up, right? So
Yeah,
so everything is mastered. Of course, the 4 singles were already mastered, and there's going to be another 7. And my buddy Joel Prue at PWS Studios in Buffalo, New York, he just finished the last one, so everything's mastered. And I'll work with a fellow named Robert McLean, who
yeah.
has a business called the Sundial Agency.
Oh, yeah.
Robert is, do you know Robert? Robert is, among other things, a manager to Will Donato and perhaps some other smooth artists. But he's kind of a one-stop shop for graphics, artwork, and putting album and such together. So he's been great for me, co-designing with me all those fantastic cover art for all the 4 singles, which I think matters, man. It's
Yeah.
marketing, it's color, they look great, and I'm looking forward to working with him because even though now I'm kind of a veteran on how to get a single released, I know an album's going to bring an own new set of challenges.
Look, absolutely, and it's really marks WarrenA.Keller, doesn't it? It's like it puts a bit of a stamp of approval. This is the album. This is the credible, the credibility of.
That's interesting that you say that. I've become really good friends with Brendan Rothwell, whom you know,
Sure.
and one of the things that Brendan said was just what you're saying, that it's kind of this watershed moment, I guess, in a career when you have that album, because early on, with, as you said, with all the singles, occasionally a DJ or broadcaster would say, "Well, are you going to do an album?" And I remember once, maybe twice, I said, give me some comments about what that means, and I never would get those answers back. Everybody's busy, and they just didn't say, well, I think an album would really cement the brand and all of that. And so it's only now that I'm really realizing the power of that, and wanting to get that album out next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that as well.
Thank you.
And So the current single at the moment release is Double Juices. And again, I think it's quite clever. I mean, I like your brand. I like the brand on that. And you mentioned the gentleman who I think was Robert who put it together for you or assisted you with that. But I want to play it shortly if we've got some time to be able to do that. But I like the branding behind it, and I love the way that your message, your singles that you've released thus far. Also kicking it spy versus spy, like that's an interesting one, and we can talk about that. But Double Juices, talk to me about the song, about the what does it mean? How did it come about?
Well, this is funny because it's a throwback, because that one happened to be the 22nd tune that I had put to tape. And I said, okay, well, what's this one going to be? Oh, it's 22. It's Double Deuces. And so when Robert sent the first cover idea, he had the same thought that I did, which was, a deuce of diamonds and a deuce of hearts playing card. It's kind of good we didn't do that, because apparently Eric Marienthal's got something out right now called Double Dealin', and it's got the cards, the deuces. So I immediately thought, wait a second, there's this legendary highway in my native New Jersey called Route 22, and it kind of leads into New York City, and it's also renowned for being a pretty dangerous highway, so like Highway of Death or Double Deuces. So that's where the idea came from. And as far as the tune itself, like I said to you before we went live on the air, sometimes it's like, where did this come from? I'm not even sure. There was some really tasty loop work that I had heard from an Italian producer guitarist named Luigi Pistillo. Right. And I got together with Luigi and used some of those riffs and his lead work and built the horn lines around that. Right.
Okay. Oh, well, let's go. Can we play the track?
Absolutely.
Double Deuces here on the Smooth Live Show with WarrenA.Keller and Spontaneous Groovin Combustion. You have a drink.
I stole this from Brian Culbertson. It works.
Good on you. Yeah, I'll have a little bit too.
There you go.
Yeah, double juices, fantastic. WarrenA.Keller, Spontaneous Groovin Combustion, Smooth Live Show. Can I say, and I'm going to put it out there, Warren, is that I think that's your signature tune. I think that's for me is and forgive me if I'm speaking out of school here, but I love it. And absolutely, when I play that on my radio shows, it's quite distinctive. I love your the pitch of your doing the solo on the sax and stuff like that, and it's just really nice, really good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's always a treat doing these interviews because I think most artists, we don't like to listen to our own stuff, right? You know what I mean? Like you hear going way back to like John Lennon, like, oh, I was so disappointed. That was a terrible album. But there's some truth to that, like you work really hard on it. And during that progression, you love it, you hate it, you like it, you hate it. And then you get that master back and it sounds great. But then you release it to the world and you kind of wash your hands of it, right? You let it do its thing. And so I literally, I won't listen to them. And then when I do an interview like that, I'm like, oh, that's kind of good. Like that.
So you're sort of doing a bit of the groove.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just really weird, but I find that when I listen to music in the dark, or when obviously at nighttime, I just get a completely different response or reaction to it. And I think though that the clarity of sound or the clarity of the song through radio or through other means, it just paints another picture. It's it's probably just me, toothpicks, just the way I roll, but I really believe that it has a different imaging.
Well, obviously, it would be a major cliche to say that music has such an impact on most people. In fact, when you run into somebody that it doesn't, you kind of look at them sideways because there's something not quite right with them, right? It's very important to us. But when you're involved in it and you're making it and you're obsessing over every little tonal change, equalization, reverb, delay, all the production stuff, you're living through that through a course of days to weeks to months. And so you do get jaded on it. And it's difficult to get that feeling of a new listener hearing it for the first time. And so that's what I'm saying to you, Paul, is like on an evening like tonight, where it's always a nice thing to get together with a broadcaster and you hear that tune again and you go, oh, wait a second. No, that sounds really good because there's been a little bit of time passage. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting also, Warren, that, you talk about once it goes out to air and then you're busy then preparing for the next, aren't you? You're setting up the stage for, your next release or, the works that's required on your album or getting the album ready. And,
right. You're promoting the current, helping to promote the current single, right? Because, you can't let it rest. If you build it, they will come. It doesn't work that way. And then just as you said, I'm working on something right now called Chicago Morning. That's kind of flute driven. I'm really enjoying that. And so I'm in a like stage right now. I was in a hate stage a day or two ago, but I'm back to liking it. Yeah. But it's for independent artists. I mean, it's there's so much music out there today in our genre, in every genre. And you want to do the best work you can, but you also really have to be very active as far as promotion.
Can I jump back? You mentioned about playing, Warren. How much time would you spend a day playing on your instruments? Or is it prevalent for a artist to spend, all day playing? I mean, how do you become better than who you are?
Yeah, everybody I'm sure is different. And there's so many, these YouTubers, right? I mean, there's so many young musicians that are just unbelievable. There's a kid I just started following on YouTube called Sax Logic, and he apparently has just started college at Miami in Florida.
Right.
And this kid is playing at a level that I can't even describe. I mean, there's no way this is a high school kid. I mean, he's a virtuoso, so there are those folks that have put in, gone through the conservatories and just put in hours and hours a day. And it's somebody like Charlie Parker who crammed like, 12 hours a day for like whatever they say, 7 years or something like that. I mean, I find even after playing saxophone on and off for 45 years, that if I'm away from it for more than a day or two, things change. Either my ear goes to sleep, or my chops go to sleep, or my musculature, or just that general musicality. So if for me, of course, I still do my other job, and it takes away from that time. But I've really come to a place where I really enjoy practicing, and I've got to pick them up every day. I really don't like to miss a day, and that could be, some days it's a half an hour, some days it's an hour, some days it's 2 hours, and I'm not a traditional, sort of player, right? Again, I didn't come up through conservatory. I mean, I was very highly trained as a classical clarinetist, but the rock and the jazz journey has been very sort of self-dictated and self-driven. So I've got my own approaches. I may not sit there and play exercises, scales, or etudes or whatever. A lot of it's jamming. A lot of it's jamming the Pandora, or watercolors, or whatever, and just playing to other music. And I try to mix it up, yeah. But I find I really, especially my ears, I need to be listening all the time, and responding, solo improvisation to it,
Yep.
or it really gets I get very panicky very quickly. It almost is like my musical self kind of gets turned off, and I'm like, oh, is that coming back?
Yeah, right. Okay.
And you have to be kind to yourself and go, no, dude, you've been away from it for a day or for 2 days. In a half an hour, you'll be back.
I like the way you said you challenge, or you listen to sort of Pandora and all these other watercolors. Who would you like, or who do you listen to in regards to other music?
I've never been a large consumer of music. Ever since I started writing, or being in original acts where there were writers, and that was going back to maybe 20 years old. I've never been a huge consumer of music, right? And so I don't buy a ton. So if I'm listening to those stations, I'm basically listening what's fed to me. Like Pandora lets you go thumbs up or thumbs down, right, on what you like and don't like. And so there's so much I do like. I mean, there's a lot of sound alike stuff. There's a lot of copycat stuff. There's a lot of elevator type, overly smooth stuff that doesn't stimulate me. But whether you're talking about going back to Joe Sample, who's just phenomenal, or so many of the art. I like a lot of the group driven artists, like Down to the Bone from UK, that are a little bit left of center, like I am. A lot of the funk acts. I thought that what was that? Just Us Brothers, the Chinese Checkers single, was fantastic.
Okay.
And I love Cindy Bradley's writing, and
Yeah.
I think that stuff's very catchy. I don't like when I hear things that I just consider to be an okay jam, that I don't come away with a hook, something that's really memorable. And sometimes the greatest players aren't necessarily putting out the most interesting tunes to me. But Jeff Lorber's a monster. Anything he's involved with, Rick Braun, Albright, I mentioned, is a phenomenal saxophonist. Gerald, Walter Beasley. I mean, there's so many folks that I really like. But when I write, I don't, I've always valued uniqueness and originality, and I would never consciously say, "Oh, I want to do something like that and be just like that." It's just whatever's going to come. And
Yeah.
early on, it was interesting. They were very riff driven, the tunes. It was like I'd practice and I'd go blah 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 blah. I go, oh, da, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's kind of catchy. What can I do with that? And I would build a track on that riff. Then later on, it was more about chord progressions, or I want to do this kind of mood or groove. And then there's a little bit of a terror, like, oh my gosh, well, what do I do to this? And then fortunately, those hooks finally come. Sometimes it takes work, trying several things and go, no, no, no. Oh yeah, I like that. and sometimes they just come.
Okay, yeah, I get it. Jackie's new car. So I'm hoping that you're a Ford fan, right?
Fix or repair daily, right? I don't have the car that I like. You know what I want? I want a 1939, no, actually a 1940 Willys Americar custom coupe. Like a really nice hot rod. I love those 37, 38, 39 bodies so much. And it wouldn't have to be a monster. I'd like a daily driver, but something that's got some real zip and a 5-speed on the floor, and a little modern, but a lot of traditional too. I love that stuff. Jackie's new car. Jack is my dog. You probably saw the black lab in the video. Jack is a kind of a hound dog, black lab mix. He's a fantastic dog, and he loves to go for rides. He loves cars. He'll drive anywhere, down to the mailbox or to Florida, which is 16 hours away. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
He's in that car. He loves it. And so Christine, unfortunately, had rolled a 2008 Subaru. Fortunately, did not get hurt at all. It was a low speed, 180 on slick, newly paved macadam, and she just kind of went off the road and flipped. So when we got the new car, I said, "Oh, Jack's gonna love cruising in this 2018 Subaru. Not exactly the sexiest car in the world. I don't know if it fits the Smooth Jazz portrait, but a good, reliable car. They're nice." And so anyway, so that's where the title came from, Jackie's new car.
I love the way you come up with the titles.
Yeah.
But let's go with it. So this is your third.
That was the third, and it did really nicely for us. It got played by Dave Koz on Watercolors Lounge a few weeks ago, which was a big thrill. And it's funny, as we'll hear, it's a laid back kind of a groove, and it was almost like this one kind of came like, this really isn't me. I thought, this one really isn't me. It's like, but no, this is kind of a good melody. I almost had to learn it myself because it wasn't a natural sort of Warren groove, but it's done real well for us, and we love it. And a lot of people really like it.
All right, well, let's go with it. Jackie's new car and WarrenA.Keller from Spontaneous Groovin Combustion.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, how awesome is that? Contemporary smooth jazz woodwindist, composer, producer, WarrenA.Keller, and Jackie's new car. Hey, I love the picture of your dog, Jackie, just sitting there sort of looking.
Well, I used a model. I'll admit it. I used a model. Jackie doesn't cooperate very well when you're trying to take photos of him. But I just think it's awesome because he's 11 now. He's getting a little age on him, and just to know that that tune named after him did pretty well out in the world, and that's really
Fantastic.
a nice
Warren,
feeling.
who did you listen to music-wise today?
Let me think about this. I received the mailing from SmoothJazz.com on Dave Kaz's Colors album, and I went ahead, and because Dave was so nice to play Jackie's new car, and because hey, he's Dave Kaz, I went out and I watched that video, which was with David Sanborn, and I'm trying to think if I'll remember the name of the tune, Side by Side maybe, and it was really good, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did hear that, and I was busy doing astronomy related stuff today, so I didn't listen to anything other than working on my tune for a little bit and listening to Dave.
Well, that's brought about. I've made a note here to ask you about Pick Insight. I'm interested now that you mentioned about astronomy. Let's just give us a quick overview of what it's about.
Yeah, life throws us some crazy curves, right? It was I loved astronomy as a kid, and got completely away from it through all the music years, and kind of started getting back into it in Nashville actually as a hobby.
Right.
And that was still the era of film. Some people may remember film. And I began doing astrophotography through telescopes of galaxies and nebulae and star clusters, and then transitioned into the digital world, digital CCD cameras, CMOS cameras. And while music kind of tanked for me for the second or third time after my Nashville pursuit in writing, I kind of recreated myself in astrophotography. I became a world-renowned imager artist, but also a teacher, author. Have two editions of a book, Inside Pix Insight, on a particular software. Have a streaming site with my partner in Buffalo, who we stream video tutorial series on how to process data and turn it into beautiful pictures. And I'd invite anybody to visit billionsandbillions.com, as Carl Sagan would say. That's my website, billionsandbillions.com. And you'll see some really beautiful images there. And for 10 years, that was my whole world. I mean, I met a lot of imagers that were musicians. And so there was a lot of side talk about music and what we played and all of that. And it's an interesting phenomenon. But really, that world as a vendor, as a writer, teacher, author, and an artist, that filled my whole world for a decade. And then when music came back in, now it's kind of difficult to balance the two worlds, right? Because the money comes from astronomy and the money goes out to music. But it's been a nice run.
Well, it's a perfect balance, they say. Like, I mean, you've got to find that, as you said, the balance. But I think it's it just makes you the character, the person that you are, and gives you even more determination to play great music and really push it out there to your fan base, and continue to grow who you are as a musician.
Well, it's such a wonderful genre. I mean, having been through rock and roll and country in the 70s, 80s, you had to have a major label behind you. If you didn't get that deal, there was no outlet, right? And this contemporary smooth jazz is wonderful. There's a whole architecture laid out there. Broadcasters, independent broadcasters, record promoters, branders, and if you've got the goods and you've got some money to spend, you really can gain wonderful access to hundreds of thousands of listeners, which is fantastic.
It is a new era, and I've got a point here in my notes. Music business has changed. I was going to ask you, Warren, and I think you've just taken, you stole my thunder. It has. It's changed, but it's a different harder but easier. Your scope of being able to reach millions is so much more easier to a way or to a degree, but it's whether they capture.
To a degree, right. But on the flip side, we're now up to about 7 billion souls on the planet, and we live in kind of this cult of celebrity sort of time where everybody thinks they're a somebody, and people in one sense, as I mentioned before, tend to get really good really fast if they're serious, because there's so many good resources to learn from today. But there's also lots of jetsam and flotsam of people who have little to no talent, and everybody's just flooding the bandwidth with content. So as you said, it's easier access wise, but now you're fighting 10 times more content to get seen and heard. So a little bit of a give and take there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the later, or Spy versus Spy. I want to sort of dwell into that. 2019, obviously released. That's that comes out to number 2, is it?
Correct.
Yeah, number 2. So I'm going from backwards, the best to the even the best. Let's talk about that. So Spy versus Spy, and who you in the Jackie's new car, you had Jeff Lorber as playing on the keys there. How do you get a guy like that to come in and
well
with you?
Well, that's what I need to qualify. So there's some tremendous software available to independent producers like me. I hear he's a super nice guy, and I would have access to him through Smooth Jazz, but frankly, those are generated parts through a very sophisticated software called Band in the Box by PG Music. So I'm able to go in and lay out a chord progression and an arrangement, audition parts by Lorber on keys, Alex Al on bass, Third Richardson on drums. They got some tremendous players, and you can actually, commit these parts. So it's kind of the best. It's kind of the to afford these guys, especially in these days, impossible. But that gave me a voice. I mean, as a lone producer, I'm able to put together very credible rhythm tracks with the best guys, essentially doing the playing.
Yeah. What would you say to a young artist, Warren, who aspiring young artist who wants to get out there to the market and push his music out? What would you give him? Two tips. Give that person 2 tips. To
in this genre in particular. Yeah. In this genre in particular, I would say that I found it to be very accessible, and if they have a little bit of money to promote themselves, and they're willing to put the best possible product out there, it's very doable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What's planned for Spontaneous Groovin Combustion? Well, I've got the release of the album next year in February. And what do you think? What's the next sort of couple of years look like for you, Warren?
Boy, I've always been terrible about projecting into the future. I know I've always been terrible about it. But it's been, it's kind of like living in not a fantasy world, but sometimes an altered reality, because during the week I don't have much feedback of what's going on with the tunes, right? And even frankly, I'm a little disappointed in our streaming presence at Spotify and Apple. So go ahead and stream those tunes. We've made it to a few playlists that have maybe 10,000 listeners, which is great, but we haven't been added to those official, smooth jazz playlists. So I get a feeling during the week that maybe nothing's happening, and then come Monday, which we all know Monday is chart day when you get the reports, and I'm constantly shocked, like, oh my gosh, we're on the Groove Jazz Music top 30. We're actually moving into the top. So that's pretty exciting, and it's also a mind blower. But other than just seeing how far we can take Double Deuces, the current single, and build the fan base, and working on new tunes, and again, doing the groundwork that we need to get that album out for February, that's pretty much what's taken my days up.
Do we see a single release before the album in February?
No, that's not the plan. We thought this was a good plan, and hopefully the Double Deuces will spin on as Jackie's new car did for many months, and continue to gain some traction. And if it does, I think it'll take us into that very busy holiday time, and when you've got Christmas albums coming up and whatnot, and start afresh with the February the album release.
Well, what I'd like to do is play Spy versus Spy as we exit out of the interview and the time. And I want to thank you for making the time today to come on to the Smooth Live show. It's a very honoured to have you, Warren.
Oh, it's a great joy to be here with you, Toothpicks, and I hope we get to do it again. And I'm really very happy to have made your acquaintance and gotten together with you. Just point people to spontaneousgroovincombustion.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. YouTube like and follow would be great. We appreciate all the support we can get out there. And thank you for playing us, Paul. We really appreciate that.
We love it. We love your music, and it's definitely
Awesome.
part of our profile, of what we do here we're in Melbourne. We're miles away from you guys, but we've got the presence of the airwaves, radio airwaves. So
it's fantastic.
Online. And just one more time, how do we buy your music? So if someone's interested, they can just go up to iTunes, Spotify.
Yeah,
iTunes.
it's everywhere. But if you would go to spontaneousgroovincombustion.com, and that's GROOVIN, no G, right?
Yep.
There's a page called Music, and it's got links to all of the streaming services and the download. So that's one central place you can get to it pretty quick.
Okay. Now, what I like to do, and this is with my artist profile, I always like the last question, and you can have a sip before you answer the the questions. There is that what I call breaking it down. It's a one-line response or one-line sentence response per person. So I've tell me about David Bowie in your interpretation.
Met him twice. Was one of my favorite artists as a kid. Phenomenal changeling. Just reinvented himself all the time in amazing ways.
David Sanborn.
One of my biggest, certainly my biggest alto influence. And interesting that Bowie and Sanborn worked together. And and as Dave Cause was saying today, one of the biggest influences on so many saxophonists today.
Absolutely. And Mark Mobley.
Mark Mobley. All right, I'm complete ignorance. I do not know that name.
Jazz Messengers.
Oh,
Icon.
Jazz Messengers. Okay. Yeah. Wow. I'm embarrassed. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's probably my fault, but that's great, mate. You've answered. You've ticked the box there. That's fantastic. Hey, again, Warren, thank you so much. I'm going to finish off with Spy versus Spy. We're looking forward to seeing the great successes for Spontaneous Groovin Combustion.
Thank you.
Future. I guess the last moment on live. What would you like to say out there to the audience? Bye.
We love you. I mean, how can you not love people who love what you do, what comes from your soul? And so that music comes from deep within us, and when people play that and enjoy that and buy that, that is such a great compliment. And we love you, appreciate you, and we love and appreciate our broadcasters like Paul at SmoothJazz.Melbourne, because without them it just doesn't happen. Yeah,
fantastic, Warren. Thanks so much for that. And yeah, I do encourage you to jump onto YouTube, subscribe to our channels, to both channels, SmoothJazz.Melbourne and to Spontaneous Groovin Combustion. Just get press that notification there so you get the link of what's going on. But I want to finish off with the show here on this Saturday and Friday night. Spy versus Spy. Warren, it's been an absolute treat. And the best of luck.
Same here.
This is a classic one. And go out and buy his music. Really important. It's fantastic.
Thank you.